G'day, everybody, and welcome to Zero Shot, your AI and business podcast, except minus the hype. I'm James Gauci, the CEO of Cadent, and with me today, as always, is the wonderful Llew Jury, the Managing Director of Advancer. How's it going, Llew?
Hey, James, and hello to all the listeners all over the world.
They
I hope you're really well.
They really are all over the world now. And we promised this episode last week. We kind of teased it a little bit. And the audience has been asking for it. And it's one of the most common questions that we get when you go around saying that you work in AI. This is the question that most often comes up. Most people are just using ChatGPT, or maybe not most, but many people are just using ChatGPT, and it's not because they've evaluated whether or not it's effective or how well it performs or because they've taken a look at the alternatives or because it's the best for what they need, but it's because they came first, right? And that's rarely a good reason to pick anything, especially now that we've got a little bit more of a mature market. We've got Claude, we've got Gemini, we've got Grok, some of the biggest and most legitimate models and AI systems out there, all very different, with different companies behind them and very different philosophies as well about what AI is and could be and should be. And Llew, like me, you've got all of them open right now on your desktop, don't you?
Look, I knew you were going to say that. I knew you were going to ask that. I certainly do. And absolutely, James, they're just literally, I've got multiple screens and multiple tabs in my Google Chrome. Look, today we're not going to have any of those lab scores and benchmarks and any of that stuff that sounds like it's straight out of, some AI generated research. But that, a lot of that stuff doesn't tell you a lot, the stuff that hits the mainstream media, does it? But we're going to break down what each model's about, what it's good at, where it falls short, what it can do, what it costs, most importantly. That's changing all the time. And then one that I'm really interested in, James, is the company behind each one and all the nuances that we know about. We're going to impart all of that knowledge because we think, don't we, that that's what matters the most, what's behind them for the people that are listening.
That sounds like a really good conversation. But before we get into it, just a quick thanks to our sponsor, Prompt Cowboy. And this is a perfect example, this episode, of why Prompt Cowboy matters. Because when you've got 4 different models open and you're switching between them, the quality of what you get out of each one comes almost entirely down to the quality of what you put in, because a vague prompt will give you a vague answer, right? Prompt Cowboy's agentic prompting feature helps you actually build out a structured and precise prompt before you take it to whichever model you're using. So instead of getting average results from an amazing tool, you get a really good result from an amazing tool. So head to promptcowboy.ai and check it out. I think they've got some free trials going and things like that, Llew, don't they?
They do, James, and what they've got is a really good paid version. I actually use the paid version all the time. I use it for a lot of AI training I do with my clients, and a lot of actual clients I see a month later when we're actually doing some agentic builds and doing some other cool stuff. They say, I've also got them paid for Prompt Cowboy. So get into Prompt Cowboy and write on down. So should we get into the tools of the week?
I'm going to do news of the week, and it's a bit
news of the week.
Personal news of the week. I was lucky enough to be invited down to Deakin University for they had an alumni conference, and they had a special session on AI, and I was one of the panel members there. And something that I learned while I was there from one of the other AI practitioners was that, hey, you know what? The latest versions of AWS's foundation models, their Nova models, they're actually getting quite good at agentic workflows. And so that prompted me to jump in as an AWS partner, full disclosure, jump in and start trying out some little things. And honestly, far out the value.
Game changing.
The performance per dollar on those things is pretty insane. And part of the reason why they've been able to achieve that is because they've vertically integrated that part of their stack. So they're running those models on their own processes in their own data centers. And of course, it's a great way for Jeff Bezos to get more customers through the door, isn't it, Llew?
It is, mate. It is. And look, so does it sit within the Bedrock family? Is it part of that?
Yeah, you can access it through Bedrock. And if you're, on the enterprise scale of things, there are a few different ways to access it as well. But one of the benefits there is you can have it on shore, and you've got all of your inference happening here. You don't have to be sending transcripts to other countries and stuff like that. So yeah, attractive in that respect.
That's a hot tip for anybody that is building out there. Go and check it out on AWS. Well, James, my tool of the week just gets better and better, and we're going to talk about the tools that I use all the time in the next in this whole segment, if you like, this whole episode. And my tool of the week is Granola.ai, as in the sort of the food granola. It's a little green downloadable button on your app store. And look, Granola sits on your computer, records meetings or in audio locally rather than sending a visible bot. So there's no longer those awkward, hey, Llew Jury's recording bot has joined the meeting, which I think everybody's getting rid of now. Like they're literally, disappearing and people will sort of see them and get rid of them before the actual real person joins. You know what I mean? So I think the big thing is disclosure, though. You need to actually, throughout Australia, make sure that people know that you're recording. But I went to a meeting yesterday with a CEO of an organization, and we were really time poor. Like he didn't have much time, I didn't have much time, and we wanted to capture as much as we could. And basically what we did was I said, would you mind if I just use granola? And basically he said, yes, we recorded the whole thing. I sent him the transcript. He said, that's exactly what I want. I've now actually, used Claude and my AI to actually go into my granola and develop me a proposal and do it all in real time while I'm doing 50 million other things. So they've raised 125 mil Series C from some of the biggest VCs. They're pretty cool. And check out Granola, and you can actually use it on your phone. So you can actually grab your phone and tell someone you're using it, of course, or you just hook it up to your Google Meet, and it automatically starts up and records every call that you can do. So Granola.ai, James, is the one.
Very cool. Very exciting. And now that we've gone through our little tools and tips of the week, let's dive into the meat and potatoes of today's talk, which is having a talk about the leading frontier AI shops out there and what they bring to bear, what each model is, what it's good for, and maybe we can do a little bit of an overview of each of the platforms first. Llew, we can have a bit of a talk about them qualitatively and at a high level before we dive into the detail. Does that sound all right to you?
Yeah, let's do it, and let's start at the top with ChatGPT and the all rounder they call it, with the biggest ecosystem. I mean, James, how many weekly active users or something? Is it 800 million, 900 million? Weekly 800 million weekly active users. Now, a lot of those are on the free plan, right? And they've had a recent release called GPT 5.5. Of course, ChatGPT, OpenAI is the parent company. Sam Altman is the CEO. They're the strongest for general tasks. I mean, I always say when I'm doing training, they're great for multimodal work. They're great for, doing some agentic workflows if you load up skills and things like that. They've now got good skills is on the pro plans and the business plans and things like that, the higher plans. But basically, deep integrations with Microsoft 365. They natively hook up to Google. But also, I always say, aren't they really good to book your Vietnam holiday or your Fiji holiday? Or, I actually think ChatGPT, because it's free and it has so many weekly active users, is the first port of call for a lot of people. And that's, doing some amazing things for a lot of people, and they don't even need to pay, right, James?
Yeah, that's right. And I think what's worth kind of mentioning about ChatGPT and OpenAI as an AI shop, they originated the conversational interface for large language models, and it just went absolutely berserk. And their journey over the last, let's call it 5 years, has been really fascinating to watch, and not without very deep controversy.
What is some of that controversy, James?
Oh, look, there have been, and we've talked about it a couple of times on the podcast, but they've had some major corporate governance issues. They've had a lot of instances where they've been seen to be less than forthcoming about what the truth of their operations are. But what you can't deny is the performance of some of their products. And until, I would say, about a year and a half ago, they were absolutely at the top of the pile, and there was
100%.
no question. But that's changed a lot in the last 18 months, and we're starting to see some new leaders take shape, and we've started to see this next company kind of take the ascendancy as far as the specialist AI frontier labs are concerned, and that's Anthropic, Llew. And Claude is Anthropic's main product. Claude is an AI system which is a combination of models and interfaces and harnesses and things like that. But they split off from OpenAI in those earlier days post ChatGPT. Some of the leading researchers, like Daria Amadai was one of the lead AI safety researchers at OpenAI split off because of ethical disagreements
Yes.
with
It
Sam
reminds
Altman and
me
friends.
It reminds me, James, of a bit of early 2000s with Google, and they had this slogan, "Don't be evil." Remember that? And and they sort of broke off a few years ago and said, we don't want to be evil. We don't want to be like that side. And maybe it's because of some of the people hanging around and maybe some of the investments they made and things like this over at OpenAI. These things are being tested now in the courts. And I believe Elon Musk lost his first round. He's appealing, I believe. But, there's a legal case between Elon and OpenAI. And it's a bit like doing a Stephen Bradbury in the Olympics in 2002 with, Claude and Anthropic have skated through, haven't they, to the gold medal at the moment. Claude's and Anthropic's run rate, it's Anthropic because it's not only just Claude that we all use, it's also the APIs and all the other pieces that go on with a frontier model. But they're doing the Stephen Bradbury, which is basically coming not from behind, but coming from pretty much nowhere and coming through it. Now, I read that their run rate is at 30 billion US and OpenAI's is at 25 billion US. So they're obviously doing something right. And I think it's all stemmed from, really having the enterprise business case. They've got 42% of the market, or 42% of enterprise coding tasks in 2025 were done using it versus 21% on OpenAI, right? And then they had this whole thing in late February that you could sort of claim was the Strait of Hormuz and the whole thing with Iran and everything, but it was the same weekend that all of that stuff happened, which we might talk a bit later on with ethics and stuff. But it's just been remarkable to see the growth of Anthropic and how I just think my idea, mate, is that I actually think they've just packaged up what you call the agent harness. They've actually built all that and just made it so simple for the average person to use. Right?
And there's a bit of a virtuous cycle there as well, because the better your harness is and the better your context is and the better the quality of your skills are, the better the quality of the training data that that Anthropic as a frontier lab has to work with, and they get into a bit of a virtuous feedback loop with quality data. And I think that their ability to retain their integrity throughout the process probably makes them look a little bit different in the eyes of the market. And that could be some of the larger enterprises and governments are looking at them seriously as a contender, not just at the consumer level and the industry level, but to partner with in government.
That training comment that you just made, James, is really important. And it goes to the heart of a question I ask. I ask it every week at my training courses that I run on AI for various businesses. And one is, what do you think the largest body of knowledge or training data could be out there? Elon bought Twitter for 40 billion US. So that's a large amount of data, right? Anthropic, and OpenAI try and train on things like Reddit, right? But I always say, what have we been doing for 25, 26, 27 years? We've been searching. And all of our searches on Google, and that's Gemini, are basically there. Everybody's been searching since the late 90s, early 2000s. So that's a significant body of knowledge. And you can sort of see a lot of people go, yes, right. I get that I should actually have a bit of a look at Gemini as well. So Google's model Gemini base, Gemini 2.5 Pro, the largest context window, right, of a million.
Yeah, well, 3.1 Pro has been around for a little while now. They were the first model to, Google's Gemini was the first model with a million token context window.
That's right. Yeah.
And for those who aren't familiar with the lingo, a token, a word usually is 2 to 3 tokens long.
Unbelievable is 4, by the way. Unbelievable.
Cool. That's unbelievable.
That's unbelievable.
I mean, one of the routes to success that Google has had, because of that unfair data advantage that they have across all facets of life, personal and professional, they've been able to really bulk up their models quite quickly, and they can afford to be a fast follower. They can let the frontier labs like the OpenAIs and the Anthropics kind of make the mistakes that they benefit from at the end of the day, because they know that they've got the latent data set there they've got the cloud business that they can use to just supercharge the development of whatever product they like. And that's why their new products right now are quite neatly integrated with one another. So it's not just in Google Workspace where, you're working on slides or you're working on a doc and you can just or working in email, you can just pull in Gemini and build an automation in AI Studio or what have you. You can also integrate your entire business with things like anti-gravity and Vertex. And so you've got the entire suite of options available to you within one shop. They've gone off the pace a little bit. You can see they've made a couple of tactical changes. So they've invested a lot into Gemma, which is their open source models. They're probably now the best US open source models available. So Gemma 4, the latest one, is a really big competitor to Qwen 3.6 as the best kind of all-rounder open source model that can fit on a consumer graphics processor. And then they've used that to kind of supercharge their Flash model. So 3.5 Flash is their latest frontier model, which is their fast general purpose model, which no doubt will manifest as a Gemini 3.5 Pro at some point in the next 12 months. But all of those ones I mentioned are quite recent, so we probably shouldn't expect that for a little while yet.
They're remarkably resilient, those models as well. So when I say that, some of the voice AI clients who we've been using Gemini Flash 2.5 for ages, like months and months and months. The others you tend to sort of upgrade and you try out and you do, maybe Haiku and things like that on Anthropic, but they're just beasts. Like they just last and they are true and they're very good in the background. So again, they're one of the ones that are sort of growing, taking market share. And I think in the paid era of, as this gets more expensive and we all have to pay more for it, which we're going to talk about, and my wife wants to talk about, because basically having to top up her Anthropic credits now is a daily ritual. So
just think of the Qantas points, Llew.
It's like Qantas, but the reverse. You're not earning them. You see how many tokens you're burning, but really good. James, look, before we move on, a couple of quick tips for You've got all of these running, and we didn't get to Grok, did we? But Grok is Elon Musk's AI's model is trained on Twitter, and he trained it on using 1 million GPUs, I heard, and all of that sort of stuff.
Which he's now renting back to, I think, Anthropic for $20 billion a year or something crazy. Yeah. Anyway,
nice, right? Let's go and rent them back. We do some training and away we go. But Grok is a bit of a sort of a double-edged sword. It's super powerful, amazing, and if you pay the $300 a month or whatever it is, it's incredible. But it does have some things that people may say the guardrails are down, right?
Yeah.
So a few controversies that have happened with a few search terms. I mean, all the listeners go out there and search on controversial Grok moments or something like that. See what comes back.
And that's in some ways a competitive differentiator. Like they're definitely the black sheep of the family if we're talking about these four as a family. But they have some of the things that you need for certain use case scenarios, which is sometimes we have to talk about sensitive material, and we have to talk about taboo topics and things like that, and that's sometimes healthy, but it requires a level of, in a professional circumstance, it requires more kind of human guardrails and policy and procedure guardrails and some definitions around use cases, intended use cases, and foreseeable misuses as well. And so yeah, there's a place on the tool belt for Grok, but it's a niche. Yeah.
I agree. So what do you guys use at Cadent every day, James? What's, just give us the 3 or 4 that, not what the marketing says. What are you logging onto every day, and what's already open in your browsers?
The one that gets absolutely abused is Claude. Claude Code, and it's a mix of Claude Code and just straight conversational Claude, because Claude Code gives an engineering team all of everything that they need to do everything that Claude Cowork can do anyway. So that's what we're using to develop our own systems. It's what we're using to develop systems for our customers. And beyond that, we actually consume Claude through AWS. Like we were talking about the Nova models before, we consume Claude through AWS because they have local data centers. And we're happy to pay a little bit of a premium because often we're doing secure or sensitive work, and where data egress to the States or any different jurisdiction would be a no-no. So, Claude Code and Claude are like now just almost fully dominate everything we do. But when we're looking for a low-cost alternative for some workflow-based tasks or what have you, Kimi K2 is a good thinking model. The Minimax series of models are good. Qwen for small kind of repetitive tasks. Gemma 4 is good. But when it comes to like the fully integrated harness or stack or product set, Claude is kind of top of our list at the moment. How about you, Llew?
Yeah, absolutely the same. It's there. We're doing a lot of skills work. We're doing a lot of projects work in Claude. You can set those up. A lot of artifacts are being created, and they are game changing to a lot of our business. We've had our staff move and shut down their Chat GPT $30 a month and move it across to the Claude licensing. Claude licensing on Teams, if you've got 5 or more team members, is really good as well. You get more power from that. If you upgrade it, you can then top up certain team members. So some can have more bursts than others, and they can have up to 20 times, I believe, something
Yeah,
like that. So
you get a shared pool as well
you get
of
a shared
tokens
pool.
as opposed to just having a token allocation per user.
Yeah, absolutely. And just unbelievable in terms of the power. So yeah, co-work and scheduled tasks, which is if you download the app of Claude, that's the main one. The one that I have to say has been dropping for me is Manus. And Manus is just actually they've also had been dropped from the Chinese government because they've just been knocked on the head about the whole Meta acquisition, and that was knocked on the head by the Chinese government. So they're one that since I've been using a lot more Claude in the last sort of 4 or 5 months, I haven't gone back to since the start of the year. So, things change every quarter, and we're doing a lot of Claude training now. So it's all happening.
So here's something that kind of doesn't get said enough, I don't think, Lou, and it's that when we're talking about these 4 big kind of frontier labs with their big powerful models and stuff like that, something that we don't often consider is that at that level, the model is rarely the differentiating factor, right? Like it's so much about the ecosystem and the integrations and what you can then do with that model. How can I actually apply this very powerful tool? Is it actually useful to me? And so that's on one side, the ecosystem itself. But then on the other hand, it's like we were saying earlier, garbage in, garbage out. You put a bad prompt into a great model, you're probably going to get some pretty mediocre output. But if
100%.
you can upskill yourself and do an excellent prompt with great context connected to it, and you know how to kind of handle the AI and get it to do what it needs to do, that's probably more important than having the most performant model as well. So at what point are people just doing model or AI tourism instead of actually getting to work with AI? And what's your experience of this?
AI tourism. You've heard it here first. Let's hashtag that and let's coin the phrase.
That's such a dig if you called someone an AI tourist.
You're an
That's
AI
very
tourist.
harsh.
Where are you going to next? Where are you going next week? No, but it's actually true. And I actually think, and I've got a theory behind this, that's actually very relevant because I get asked all the time by clients, I've heard Microsoft Copilot's coming out with some awesome co-work features. When will they be ready? I said, or is ChatGPT going to beat Claude now with, the agent harness piece and get better and better? And there is a number of tourists bouncing between, but I think in 2026, you've got to pick the one that you can use the best. A hot tip to everybody, and I think we should do another episode on this pod, James, around prompting and things like that, right? I actually think the whole rationale behind this is if you know how to prompt properly, and I call it the 4 pillars of the perfect prompts. So there's a bit of alliteration for you. The 4 pillars of the perfect prompts, which we can share with people,
You're a poet, Lou. You're a poet.
I didn't know it, but sorry. Sorry. Dad jokes. Yeah. Basically, yeah, what was I going to say? Like, basically, I think people leave a great model with all the power behind it because they actually don't prompt it correctly. Back to your point. So I'll wrap it there on this part of the segment. Should we get into the ethics? James?
That sounds good. I mean, something this is another thing that doesn't get a lot of airtime is not just the AI good, AI bad kind of ethics. It's more like, okay, well, let's actually pull this apart and let's understand whether the decisions that have been made in the design of these systems is actually consistent with the way that we want to do business. Because at the end of the day, this is a business podcast. And something that doesn't get advertised very often is that all of these LLMs that we're using are basically trained on huge scrapes of public information on the internet. So massive copyright issues, and we're just about to enter another round of copyright talks that have been driven by AI in this country, which is just super strange to me. And OpenAI, 25 odd open lawsuits against them.
Copyright lawsuits.
Lawsuits.
Yeah.
Anthropic settled a $1.5 billion class action in September over 500,000 books being used from pirated libraries of books. It might be part of the reason why you find the long M dashes in so many of your prompt out your AI outputs, because they're trained on novels that is one of the few places that they actually used. So that's training data, but then there's also the ethical challenges around energy use and sustainability and water use, and essentially conflict minerals being used in the production of the chips, and et cetera, et cetera. I suppose it bears kind of discussing, even though at the end of the day, as business people like you and I, Llew, we don't have power in this ecosystem to change that. But I wanted to kind of open up the conversation about what are the things that are within our power to do that will allow us to seize these competitive advantages that AI proposes to us, but do that in a way that's also consistent with our values and our brand and our purpose. Do you know what I mean?
100%. And I think it starts with voting with your feet, and it's the boots on the ground part, right? And it's what we did in as there's a bunch of humans did this in late February when the whole Pentagon thing was going on with Anthropic and Pete Hegseth, the secretary, and all of that in the US, and it was about automated systems, AI basically being allowed to sort of automate the killing part of defense, right? In a raw format. So within a day, Anthropic are out, Sam Altman's in, and then and OpenAI will do it within 24 hours. They have the deal stitched up on the Saturday afternoon, and I believe instantly 200,000 people who are paid subscribers of ChatGPT and OpenAI actually left. And if that's not boots on the ground, I don't know what is, in terms of if you've got all of this inference in front of you, not model inference, but actual inferred and implied problematic ethics, that maybe there's some governance issues going on, that is sort of people are going to start. It's going to weigh down on people about values, is what you talk about, and I think that people are going to vote with their boots on the ground. And I think the big daddy of all of that has been the New York Times, and the New York Times of not paying the journos and the authors of true content. If you're using OpenAI, you've got to start thinking, am I using something that actually was trained on content that wasn't approved by the people that wrote it? And where's the ethics around that?
And it comes down to like that. I fully accept all of that, and like to kind of add another layer to the conversation, it makes it more important for business people to understand what we're using these systems for and the risk profile that we want to expose ourselves to, because like we're talking about copyright and legal problems, which can have costs like damages awarded by a court or costs of lawyers for several years. But if your business is using one of these services, you're known for it, and all of a sudden OpenAI is, headline news around the world for X reason, and they've had a ruling go against them, what's the implication for your business? There may be, and like this is dependent on a business by business basis, but it may be that your reputation as a business then gets discolored because of your association with that brand. And it's a part of the reason why at Cadent, we're always going to be model agnostic and frontier lab agnostic. It's because we know that we can't hitch our wagon too strongly to any one AI provider, because they're all problematic in one way or another. And it's not a matter of if something is going to go wrong with one of these providers, it's only a matter of when. And if we're giving good advice to our customers, and if internal people making these kinds of AI governance decisions are being honest with themselves, then you would factor that into the risk profile. Like, what is the public perception of this company? If I told I was just about to say, if I told my grandma that we use them, would she have a problem with it? And I think you take my meaning, but grandma doesn't care what AI you're using, just by the way.
That's right. Often, as long as it's got citations, right? I actually think, James, it's a good point about the ethics around what business owners don't really understand what it means with their prompts, and what are the prompts being used to train future versions of the model. And the first thing we do when we train is actually go in and say, go here, and turn off training for frontier models. There's a little button you can do in either Claude or ChatGPT if you're on generally on the free versions. I think actually now ChatGPT on the free version you can't actually turn it off. I had a quick look at that, and
it's
quite
gone
interesting.
either way. Like, what mood is Sam Altman in this month? That's from what I can tell. That's the how the product decisions are made at OpenAI. But in all seriousness, something that's worth keeping in mind is that only in the last 12 months, it's been made a legal requirement for US-based frontier labs to retain 30 days of your transcript history of your conversations with AI companies like OpenAI, like Claude, like Google, et cetera, et cetera. So just because you've ticked "don't train on my stuff" doesn't mean they're not storing it. Doesn't mean it's not accessible to law enforcement in the States if they decide that they need it because they have a reasonable legal
Like a warrant.
legal reason. Well, they don't even need a warrant.
They don't need a warrant.
A company can. So a good example, I can give you a concrete example here. Long story short, a company was told to. It was Amazon Ring doorbells and their video.
Yeah.
So back in
Do you remember this?
something, there was a case where they had a video streaming through to the cloud servers at Amazon, and there was an FBI case. They came along and said, "Hey, because we believe someone is in danger, you have to give us the video so that we can pursue the case and seek justice, et cetera, et cetera." And the company's position at the time was, yeah, of course we had to give that over. We believed that we agreed with their assessment that somebody was in danger of being hurt or being killed. And so we handed over that information, and that was the right legal path to take and is all governed by law in the United States. However, a few years later, they'd revised that position, and think of the reasons why they would have to revise that position. It's probably hauntingly similar to what just happened with ChatGPT and the Department of War. It's not the Department of Defense anymore. It's unattractive to people that they're what they perceive as private video data, which I would agree with, because perception in those circumstances and norms in those circumstances are the ethics of the circumstance at the end of the day. Yeah, it's reasonable to believe that that wouldn't be shared with anybody other than themselves. Even if it was secure and even if it was legal, it doesn't feel right. And I think that that's something that we're going to increasingly find with AI systems as well. And we're going to increasingly find our own data turning up in places that we don't like it. And we're going to have to continue to have or increase the maturity of the conversations we have around managing these kinds of regulatory and ethical and legal situations than we have in the past, for sure.
I think before we move on to the final segment about the decision framework and, which model for which job, which is really important to everybody on the pod and this episode, I just want to reflect on Grok. And they've got an X factor about them, literally, pardon the pun.
Well, they're part of SpaceX now, aren't they? They've rolled into SpaceX. That's going to be part of the IPO, right?
Yep. And I've talked to someone the other day again, and it came out that on their Tesla, Elon just pushed it automatically down to their Tesla, and you can just on your Tesla on your screen just hit XAI now, and you can just actually activate the AI. No one asked for that, but everybody got it, right? So from a brand, from basically just a push, when you buy a Tesla, when you are a subscriber to Grok, when you're into it, you're in that world, right? And I think just a word to businesses and around the business decision, whether they've got the specific capability for your business. Look at it from a governance model. Look at it and test it against your ethics policies and your values policies and, who you are as a business and things like that. So they've got less guardrails, and that should be the test that you actually look at. So no sensitive client data and the specific things you want to ask about employees and stuff like that. The risk isn't the model itself, because he's trying to also, in a weird way, don't be evil type stuff, because he's trying to benefit humanity and go to Mars and all that sort of thing.
Who knows what the ultra utilitarian mind wants to do?
Right?
Yeah, I would find it difficult to recommend Grok in a professional circumstance in 2026.
Yep.
And there would have to be a really specific reason why it was the right choice for me. And well, I can't think of anybody who has to use Grok for their work, put it that way.
Yeah.
in Australia at the very least. In the States, maybe a little bit different.
Yeah.
Different
A bit
jurisdiction
more
with
open
different
market,
risks.
a bit more open in a way,
Yeah,
you know?
a little
Yeah.
bit, but yeah, I think in Australia, I'd be hard pressed to recommend it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's good. And let's dive into the final segment now, which is about that decision framework. Which model do I use for which job? Do we have 4 or 5 tabs open like yourself, James, and myself in terms of like we've got so many things that we use
I
different.
don't know if you've used the LLM Council before, where
No.
you can you deploy it. It's a little website and it plugs into multiple models. You just plug in multiple APIs and you ask the question once, and it gives you all of the
Yeah.
different responses from the different models for the same question. But that's, I don't know, just something that people might want to download and play with. Yeah.
I agree, and I think for super users, you need to go and basically have your best one for writing analysis and documentation, like Claude. Great for PowerPoint presentations and all that sort of thing.
Mm,
If you're in the Microsoft stack and you really don't care, like I've been doing Copilot training, right? And people just want the connectors into the Copilot,
that's
and they
right.
wanted actually the risk locked down. There's a little green shield in Copilot, and I actually asked some recently. I said, "Do you guys have Claude activated in Copilot?" And they didn't because their IT MSP just locked it down. Perfectly fine. They're using 5.5 ChatGPT as the model in there, but they get all access to their Outlook, their calendars, all that good stuff. So it is definitely horses for courses. The other one is Gemini with the whole Gmail piece, but I actually think Claude and the connectors into Google and Microsoft in my Granola, my linear project management system are just exceptional. So I think the use case that wins, James, is the one that is actually most productive for you when you're going at a rate of knots in your business. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the yeah, horses for courses. It's a choice about use cases, being clear about the processes that you're hoping to augment and improve, being clear about what matters to you in your business. But I really struggle to divorce it from the use cases and the business processes, because if you're bringing Opus 4.7 to a text summarization task, you are wasting your tokens
The
quota, you're
environment.
wasting your power, there's so much waste associated with that. And that's not to put too much of the onus onto the standard user, because I do that too, like it's normal. It's
It can
these
default,
systems.
right? It can default. You used to have it on 4.7. They'll leave it
Yeah,
on there because you're going to use the tokens and the credits
yeah,
without you realizing, and you're going to
that's
do a
right.
stupid task.
And like, I've got the quota, I've paid for it, I might as well use it, right? Like, that's what it's there for. But when you're starting to take the next level in the AI journey, and you want to level up a little bit more, you want to start taking a systematic approach to AI within your business, when you're hoping to automate and augment repetitive tasks that are low value but high cost. That's the point at which you have to start thinking about, okay, well, maybe Kimi K2 gets us all of the way there for that task, or
Mm.
which has basically Sonnet 4.6 levels of capability for 10% of the price kind of thing. Or alternatively, maybe we can use Gemma 4 as a coding assistant, because our engineering team is super skeptical of Claude Code and all that kind of stuff. If we just have local Gemma 4 on their machines, give them a bit of extra RAM, and they can get the code completion done to a very high level of quality, and they can get the little accelerations that way. So it is horses for courses in that way. But if we're talking about frontier labs, if you need video generation, I don't know why you would need like ad hoc video generation, but for those who do, or music generation, for
Mm.
those who do, Google is the place to go. For those who need no guardrails, Grok is the place to go. For those who need the highest performing reasoning and exceptional models at every tier, Claude is the way to go. It really comes down to what you need most of the time as to what harness you choose, what product ecosystem you choose. And it's increasingly becoming like, oh, are you Android or Apple?
Yeah,
It's
it is, isn't it?
it's the same. Are
Yeah,
you OpenAI or are you Claude?
Claude.
Which additional AI or specialist AI system do you use? And then the rest is just Copilot and Gemini for the people who are, don't need to prioritize AI or haven't prioritized AI yet in their strategy. So that's
Yeah.
my take on that.
Yeah, and look, there's so many different ways you can approach it, and I think the big thing is that there's no right or wrong answer. It's what you get the most out of. So try all the free versions on each of them for your particular, line of work and the industry that you're in. And if you're in different industries like a writer and a content writer, you might be well on the Claude side, but OpenAI might be just as good because these days you can set up in these great models. You can set up skills and you can set up projects and
Mm,
and memory around it learning about you and go to prompt Cowboy and build some great instructions and it will just be supercharged. The
mm.
biggest kicker for me is the skills features inside.
Yeah, and that comes back to that conversation around prompting, around context,
Yeah.
because if you know how to prompt well, if you know how to engineer context well, and maybe we can talk about this in a future episode, but you can get consistently high quality output. It doesn't matter which one of these you choose. Then it brings all the rest of these factors more into focus because the intelligence itself is the commodity. It's everything that's around it, including your own capabilities, that is becoming the differentiator. So it's a space to watch for sure.
That's exactly it. It's your creativity and what you make it, right? So
Mm,
I just want to finish up this segment on before you decide on which model to use. There's probably a question to ask yourself. What's the specific task? Who in your organization is going to run it?
mm,
And what does a bad output actually cost you? So
mm,
if a bad output or AI work slop or AI slop, which is that Polzier backwards, by the way, who just raised, I think, on a 30 mil val or something, Polzier.ai, one guy, and it's just AI running the whole thing.
mm-hmm.
Anyway, if a bad output makes a mistake for you, use whatever's fastest and cheapest. Gemini on the free tier is pretty good. ChatGPT is pretty good. There's all these other great ones, but make sure it doesn't hallucinate for you. That's the critical thing.
Here's a closing question for you, Lou. Uh, this is a toughie. I'm going to ask you to predict the future. How about that? That's
Well,
easy
let's
for you, right?
let's get the crystal ball out.
1 year from now, what do you
Yeah.
think this conversation looks like? Is it going to be the same? Do you think one of these companies is going to pull away? Are they going to have another breakthrough? Are they going to do something commercially or technically or ethically that reshapes the conversation? Because even 6 months ago, it looked somewhat different. And even during the period that we've had this podcast and we've been talking in this forum,
Yeah.
it's changed fairly significantly. What do you think?
Even during this episode, it's probably changed, James. I think it's about money, and I think it's about public markets and private capital, which has been propped up by private capital, venture capital funding. I think there's a couple of listings coming at the end of the year in the US with OpenAI and Anthropic, and I think the winners are going to be the ones that can access retail money the quickest to actually keep their market share, their growth, and things like that. But it can't end well in 12 months' time if you don't have capital. And I think there's going to be some mergers and acquisitions and some consolidation.
Mm.
And I think the ones like the Perplexities of the world and the Manuses of the world and the ones that are just sort of hanging on will be absorbed into the key frontier models. And I think we're going to have three key ones running. Never write off Google because they always have the deep pockets. And for many, many years, I've been watching Google and knowing that they're just going to come in and
And
really some.
they invented the architecture. Don't
They did.
anybody ever forget that. They invented the transformer that
Correct.
OpenAI picked up and applied to language, and then everything else happened after that. So it's worth keeping
Yeah.
them in mind, as they might feel like a dark horse, but they're not as dark a horse as you might expect.
What about you, James? I said money. What's your take? 12 months, crystal ball.
I think that I think economics. So just to kind of broaden out the scope beyond money a little bit. So not just financial economics, but global economics is going to fundamentally shift things. The EU is in total retreat from any US technology integration situation between the situation in the South China Sea and Taiwan and in the
Mm.
Middle East. These are all quite novel and large scale economic challenges that we're grappling with. And I think in a lot of ways, they're going to define what's happened next. And I'm not a person who's a specialist in economics or a specialist in being able to divine what the impact is going to be. But I think the businesses that keep their options open during this somewhat economically uncertain time and can survive along the way with those options open are going to be the ones that come out on top.
Agreed.
And I think that we're seeing that at Anthropic. I think we're seeing that at Google. I think we're seeing that at Microsoft. I mean, there's only one reason why Microsoft would be rocking up to Canberra with $25 billion in their back pocket, and that's because they need to hedge their bets on data centers. And similar with Claude and Anthropic, they came to Australia with a plan and some money, and all of a sudden there's an MOU with the federal government. So
and $4 million.
These things are not happening by accident. These are business decisions that are being made. Yeah, we're just seeing a bit of a rewriting of the maps when it comes to influence and power at the moment, which is having an impact on AI. So I don't know what's going to happen, but I can see that style of board playing out, which is really interesting, at least.
I wonder what episode we'll be up to when we announce that, James. It's going to be fun. And it's probably good to wrap it up now, do some takeaways. My key takeaway from today was the model you're using is a vendor decision, not just a tool decision, right? So it's about all of the values that you talk about and the company behind it and the ethics and the data that it was trained on. Really important to make that decision, and what the owner is willing to do with the model, to your point, is really important to me. So before you have a look at them and pay for them, I'd actually use them for free and, basically investigate to how deep you want to go. Don't just skip that step because it's AI. James, what was your key takeaway?
Yeah, I think the thing that resonates most for me is that, the model choice is less consequential than your method of use and the tools you're using in using any given model. And that requires capability development internally, actually upskilling your people, but it also requires an understanding of how to integrate these capabilities into your business from a systemic perspective. If you can make a decision about the model, if your headache is which model to choose right now, just choose one. Just make sure you know what job you want it to do, and then dedicate yourself to testing it. Take your 3 or 6 or 9 or 12 months to sign up for that, actually use it, get more validated data, because that's the only way you're going to find out whether it is enough for you, whether it's great for you, whether it's perfect for you. You're not going to know until you actually get stuck in and start using it and dedicate yourself to getting that validated data. So yeah, model choice is one thing, but knowing how to use it and getting validated data is another.
Great insights, James. Great insights. And let's get into next week. We're going to demystify something that confuses everybody, right? It's everything about AI and memory and how AI memory actually works under the hood. I mean, it's just something there's a memory button and you can install memory, you can add memory, but what's going on behind the hood with a model and, that's been trained on this information we talk about today and a model that has context in the current conversation that you're actually using and when you're in the moment, and a model that has persistent memory that carries across sessions, right? So it's going to be awesome to break it all down and see where the industry is going with this, because it's so important for that quick recall and, I don't know, saving on tokens. But
and there's some really cool stuff happening in this space as well with some of the agent harnesses like Hermes and OpenClaw, where their memory is allowing them to recursively, and I use that word liberally in this context, but recursively self-improve. So these systems can teach themselves how to do the things that you ask them to do better and better and better over time. And so these are new ways of using computers that we should probably get across if we're going to get the best out of them moving forward, right? One thing to do before we part ways today, Llew, is thank our sponsor, Cowboy.ai. If today's session made you think about which model you're using and why, the next question is, are you prompting it well enough to get the best out of it? And that's what Prompt Cowboy is built for. So trot on over to promptcowboy.ai.
Yeehaw. Yeehaw.
Well, thanks, everybody. Thanks, Llew, and thanks, everybody, for joining Zero Shot. That's it for today's session. We're building Zero Shot for you, everyone. You might be skeptical about AI. You might be a builder of AI. You might be a strategist in a business. And you might just so happen to be trying to move the needle in your particular game. but we don't just want to talk at you. We want to have a conversation. So join the conversation.
Yes.
We love to see who's in the room with us. So whoever you are, wherever you're tuning in from, your perspective is what keeps this podcast anti-hype and clarity first. So if something landed for you today, send this episode to somebody in your world who needs to hear it. The person in your team who keeps saying we should do something about AI, the one who's still waiting for the right moment to start. We'd genuinely love to reach them. And if you have a topic that you'd like us to cover, then please let us know. A question that you want to answer, a perspective you want us to dig into, put it in the comments and we'll cover it, because we read everything, don't we, Llew?
We do. And we've had some crackers. We're actually talking to a few people at the moment that are just incredible people. And thank you so much for reaching out and keep doing it. But go to zeroshot.com.au and you can go to everything from there and subscribe on YouTube and go to TikTok and, Instagram and LinkedIn, of course. So shout out to Yenia as well, James. Thanks to Yenia Larotta, our producer extraordinaire. And stay sharp, stay sovereign, and we'll see you in the next episode. Cheers, James.
Take care, everyone.